Kia ora, good evening. One person is dead following a collision near Woodend in Invercargill this afternoon after a Subaru rental car and B-train truck collided at the intersection of Boundary and Motoremu roads around mid-afternoon. Head injuries claimed the life of one, while two of the other three who were trapped in the vehicle were taken to Southland Hospital with minor injuries. Police are working with the injured to determine nationalities of those involved, while the driver of the truck was uninjured. A crowded rental property on Invercargill's Bluff Road was the scene of a tragic fire in the early hours of Sunday morning that claimed the life of a 45-year-old woman. Fire investigators and police are still determining the cause of the fire that claimed one life and risked the lives of 13 others, several of whom were treated for smoke inhalation. The woman's body was recovered from a caravan on site, which was gutted by fire that then spread to the adjacent rental property. A female alerted the occupants by banging on the door, a move that potentially saved the lives of several others inside because there were no working smoke alarms installed. The absence of smoke alarms is causing increasing concern for firefighters, who say the onus is on the tenant to keep themselves safe.
This is a third incident in a week around New Zealand where we've had tenanted properties with high occupant numbers and with major fires that could have, we've had a fire here with a catastrophic outcome and it could have been a lot worse as with the other two around the country. So the best insurance, absolutely, smoke alarms. These things here are lifesavers. The fire service recommends long life photoelectric smoke alarms, so they come with a 10-year battery. They do cost a little bit more, around $30, $35, but for 10 years, $3, $3.50 a year, it's very, very cheap insurance for your family.
There's currently no law for landlords to have to supply smoke alarms, but what is it that's stopping tenants from doing it themselves, do you think?
Apathy, in one word. So, homeowners, occupiers of tenanted properties need to take the responsibility themselves to make sure they're looking after their families. It's up to you to go to the shop, go and buy the smoke alarm, get it installed and test it once a month. So it's working smoke alarms that save lives. If
people want some help with installation or need more information?
Absolutely. Fire Service can help with more information. There's a brochure here that is a very, very good read. We call it a cup of tea booklet. It takes about that long to read it. There's some great tips in this book in terms of keeping your family and safe from fire. 80 to 85% of the fires in New Zealand where people are hurt or injured, we've got homes with no smoke alarms, or we've got cases where smoke alarms are installed with no batteries in them. So, that's a really, really high statistic. So these things work, and we totally encourage people to make sure that they take responsibility to themselves to put one of these things in.
The dedicated kakapo recovery effort is making great gains, with 6 new chicks this breeding season, boosting their precarious population in the past week. 7 chicks hatched, with 1 death over the last week. 5 chicks are being hand-raised with 24-hour round-the-clock monitoring and nest minding, while another was born in the wild on Little Barrier Island. All chicks are healthy and feeding well, but they are prone to respiratory illness at the 3-week mark. The kakapo's been called the world's friskiest, fattest and least able to fly parrot. They can live to 120, making them the longest-lived birds in the world, and were kept as pets by Māori and European settlers. Patrons attending a concert at the newly rebuilt Stadium Southland were left feeling unsafe due to the steep incline of the Tim Shadbolt stand. A lack of handrails to support those heading up and down the steeply raked stand is being addressed quickly by stadium management after several complaints following Saturday night's rock and roll concert.
Whilst the stand meets the building code, we've had some guests saying to us that, look, for the elderly patronage that was at the show, it was quite difficult for them to get up and down the stand, and we really acknowledge that. There's no issue around that.
The raking on the stand, it's not overly steep, as you say, it meets the code. What is the issue, do you think?
Oh, well, I think with the age of the patronages that come to those sort of shows, that was 60 plus, and it is quite a steep incline for them. And I guess it's all about making sure we take the next health and safety step, which we're going to do. We've had the engineers this morning having a look at the stand and seeing if we can't meet their need. Obviously, it's going to be a well-used stand, and we want people to have a really enjoyable time while they're here. And if it's going to compromise their safety and they feel unsafe, then simply we'll just do something about it.
What have the engineers looked at as a result of this, and what would you be proposing to perhaps rectify it?
Just the gradient really of going up, obviously the stairways, and then making sure once they are up there that they have something to hold on to. And we've got that in the big stand in the corporates 1, 2 and 3 and 4. It's there. Obviously a little bit of that in the Ray Harper stand. And it's not unlike Forsyth Bar and also probably the Civic Theatre at the top end of that, where it's reasonably steep. So it's just about making sure that people feel safe all the time.
Do you feel yourselves as management that if there had been an event where they had to exit quickly with a fire or something along that line, do you think that you would have been able to get them out safely and timely?
Yeah, we've put a lot of work into that, Margot, to be fair, with the New Zealand Fire Service. We've had some trial evacuations, so we've worked really hard with them to ensure that we're not going to compromise people's safety, and that's our key issue, obviously, for any event. And in that case, on Saturday night, there was never ever any issue around compromising people's safety.
Stay with us. After the break, an unnamed benefactor donates $100,000 toward a sculpture for South Invercargill. Welcome back. $100,000 is to be spent on a public sculpture in South Invercargill. A competition's to be held with local, national and international sculptors being challenged to provide a vision for a landmark work. The Ellis Road sculpture project's being commissioned by South Alive, with $100,000 being donated by an unnamed benefactor. A South Alive spokesperson says the selected work will reflect the transformation being sought for the area and will serve as the northern gateway to the South City shopping area. The sculpture will be situated on the corner of Ellis Road and Dalrymple Street on the southeast corner of Russell Square. Sculpture design submissions close on May 23rd. Up to 3 finalists will then be awarded $2,000 to further refine their concepts. 4 people were rescued from Fovo Strait yesterday morning following engine failure. The vessel, the Kotari, was sent a distress call from its location near Ruapuki Island. Both the Bluff Coast Guard vessel NZAS Rescue, which was in the Fovo Strait training, and the Stewart Island Experience Ferry Fovo Express responded to the distress call. 2 of the crew who had been diving when the distress call was made were located and picked up from Ruapuki Island, while another ferry, the Southern Express, towed the Kotari and the remaining 2 crew members back to Bluff Harbour. Southlanders in their thousands embraced the opportunity of sampling international cuisine at the weekend's Multicultural Food Festival.
The 5th edition of the Southland Multicultural Council's Food Festival proved a huge success, with organisers reporting that around 3,500 enjoyed a day of great food and entertainment. The event has moved from James Hargis College to the new Stadium Southland, allowing more room for diners and extra stall holders.
It is the first time that we moved to the ILT Stadium. It grew. Last year we had about, I think it was between 10 and 15 food stalls, and now we've got about 19, 20. So you can see, it's lots of people, different kitchens, and everybody has come together yesterday. Most of them came yesterday, set up all the equipment, and they arrived really early this morning to put all the foods. They've been working really hard.
Southland's cultural makeup is constantly changing as employment and study opportunities lure more internationals into the region. For the Multicultural Council, Saturday's Food Festival is an all-important tool for providing a cultural bridge of understanding between communities.
These events are really important for the community. The Southland Multicultural Council wants to reach everybody, and we want to generate some sort of understanding about cultures, and we want to link a bridge between local Kiwi culture and the cultures that are living in Southland. And we want to share our cultures through food, through music. We want to teach about our traditions, our costumes, and we also want to learn from the Kiwi culture because we live here, and it's important to learn from each other and awaken the cultural awareness among all of us anyway.
For the Council, the success of the event is not measured in dollar values, but in understanding and knowledge of the now diverse makeup of Southland as a region. Hunter Andrews, South Today News.
It's been 200 years since Samuel Marsden delivered the first proclamation of the gospel in New Zealand. On Christmas Day 1814 at Oihi in the Bay of Islands, the Reverend Marsden and Ruatara first proclaimed the gospel. As part of the bicentennial year celebrations, Bishop of Dunedin Dr Kelvin Wright is walking the length of his diocese from Stewart Island to Kurau.
This is 200 years since the first Christian message was proclaimed in New Zealand. So this is a hikoi to remember Samuel Marsden, who preached the first sermon on the Bay of Islands in 1814, and Ruatara, the chief who brought him out here.
How amazing, isn't it, that we are celebrating things that from 200 years in New Zealand history, European history in New Zealand?
Yes, it's gone past pretty fast, but we're a young country, but we have got a deep history, and the history of the church in New Zealand actually begins with the Maori rather than the Pākehā. Especially here in the south, the first missionaries were actually Maori, and then we had Pākehā missionaries who arrived in the 1820s, 1840s. So it's 170 years also since the first Pākehā missionary, Reverend Waller's, arrived.
And amazing to think what Southland would have been like 200 years ago. It wouldn't have been an easy walk along State Highway 1 for sure.
No, but those early fellows, they walked everywhere. Bishop Selwyn, the first Anglican bishop in New Zealand, he walked from Auckland to Stewart Island, not over Fogo Street obviously, well, not that I know of, but he walked one end of the country to the other. That's just what they did, and I guess this walk is keeping the spirit of that. Yes.
Let's talk about the walk. Where are you off to from here? Green Hills. You were Stewart Island yesterday, then Bluff, and now you're moving towards Invercargill.
We were in Bluff yesterday, spent last night in Bluff, Invercargill today, and then we're walking up through Lumsden to Queenstown. Then we're going to boat up Lake Wakatipu. We're going to take the Tauri Gorge Railway and the Central Otago Rail Trail to Dunedin, and then we're finishing in Kurau.
Why Kurau?
Anglican Church is divided into areas called dioceses, and my diocese runs from the Waitaki Valley to Stewart Island, so it's the length of our local territory.
And a great way to catch up with people along the way, of course.
Oh, that's part of it. It's not just to make a sort of a commemoration of events, but it's to help me to connect with the land and to meet people and talk to them about what's happening. And just you can get to know people and get to know the land by walking in a way that you can't by any other way.
And how much time have you allowed for this? Is this fairly open-ended, or do you have a deadline?
We have a schedule for every day, and we're going to finish in Kurau on Palm Sunday. That's April the 13th.
Coming up on Sport tonight, post-match action from the Highlanders' narrow loss to the Force in Dunedin at the weekend from the news team. Good night.